Hello, crime lovers. Welcome to an all new episode of On the Case with me, Detective Alex Cardinale. Tonight, I break down a all new case. The crime I'm going to cover tonight is the very first movie theater mass shooting that took place on July 20th, 2012. So, this movie theater mass shooting took place almost 10 years ago. And as a matter of fact, this coming July, it will be 10 years since the Aurora movie theater mass shootings that was committed by James Holmes. So I actually remember this crime very vividly. I remember where I was when I learned about this horrific crime. I was actually watching TV at home, and the breaking news story broke about a mass shooting at a local movie theater in Colorado. And at the time, I was living in Massachusetts, but it was a breaking news story because it was a mass shooting and there were a lot of casualties. And it was like the first or second night screening of the new Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises. So it was a very shocking crime that certainly shocked America. And it is the largest mass shooting since the Columbine High School shooting in Colorado many years prior. And to this day, it is the only movie theater mass shooting in the United States history, and hopefully it will stay that way. So, the perpetrator of this mass shooting is James Holmes. He is a very sick individual. He pleaded insanity in the case when he went to court, but ultimately, the judge did not agree that James Holmes had a sanity. He knew what he was doing. So today I'm going to break down the entire case. I'm going to tell you things you need to know about James Holmes and everything you need to know before the mass shooting. And then I'm going to talk about the mass shooting in detail, including how it happened, the response from 911, and I'll conclude with how long James Holmes will be in prison for. Very, very sad case. You never know when a mass shooting is going to happen. You could be going to the movie theater to enjoy yourself with your family or your friends, and you could be faced with a mass shooter, which is incredibly sad when you think about it. So, also at the end of the show, after I give my thoughts on today's case, I'm going to talk about what I would do if I was faced in a mass shooting situation. So that should be a very interesting part of today's show for me. So, to all my viewers out there, whether you're watching this video live or you're catching the replay, please post in the comments your thoughts on this horrific mass shooting. Where were you when you got notified of the mass shooting that happened in Aurora, Colorado at a movie theater? And also, I want to know, what would you do in a mass shooting situation? Post them in the comments. I am fortunate to be friends with a couple of current police officers, a retired police officer, and also I'm friends with some people that are in the military, and they have all given me advice on what to do in a mass shooting, and I'll talk about it towards the end of the show. With that being said, let's dive right into the case and talk about everything you need to know. So here is what you need to know about this crime, the Aura movie theater shooting from July of 2012. So we're going to talk about the perpetrator, James Holmes. So James Holmes was born on December 13th, 1987. So he's only a couple years older than me. And James Holmes is an American mass murderer responsible for the 2012 Aurora, Colorado shooting in which he killed a dozen people and injured 70 others. 62 were directly and 8 were indirectly at a Century 16 movie theater on July 20th, 2012. So James Holmes had no known criminal background before the shooting occurred. Before the shooting, James had booby-trapped his apartment with explosives, which were defused one day later by a bomb squad. After the shooting, James was arrested shortly after and was jailed without bail while waiting trial. Following this, he was hospitalized after attempting suicide several times while in jail. He entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, which ultimately was accepted. His trial began on April 27th, 2015, and on August 24th, he was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences plus 3,318 years without parole. As I said earlier, James Holmes was born on December 13th, 1987, in San Diego, California. His father, Robert Holmes, is a very smart man. He's a math musician and a scientist with degrees from Stanford University, UCLA, and UC Berkeley. And his mother, Arlene Holmes, is a registered nurse. James has a sister. James was raised in Oak Hills, a community in Monterey County near Castro, California, where he attended elementary school. At 12 years old, James moved back to San Diego. There he lived in the Rancho Penisquadas neighborhood where he reportedly began to decline socially. He went to Westview High School and graduated in 2006. He played soccer and ran cross country in high school. According to his lawyer, Daniel King, James Holmes began to suffer from mental health issues in middle school, and he attempted suicide at the age of 11. According to James Holmes himself, during his childhood, he was frightened of what he called nail ghosts that would hammer on the walls at night. He would also see shadows and flickers at the corners of his eyes, which would fight each other with firearms and other weapons. Holmes saw social worker Margaret Roth once before she sent him to psychiatrist Lynn Fenton. Holmes was depressed and obsessed with killing for over a decade. That is a key red flag. Despite these issues, James graduated from high school in 2006 and completed a bachelor's degree at University of California, Riverside in 2010. He decided to pursue a graduate degree at University of Colorado and moved to Aurora. And this is where he committed the movie theater mass shootings. In Aurora, James lived on Parish Street in a one-bedroom apartment in a building with other students involved in health studies at the University of Colorado. In a rental application for an apartment, he described himself as quiet and easygoing, and in an online dating profile, he described himself as a agnostic. He left some digital footprints, like a university email address, an old MySpace photo, a dating profile on Match.com, and a profile on Adult Friend Finder, as well as a resume at the employment website Monster.com. Holmes allegedly hired prostitutes and left reviews of their services on an online message board. Geez, let me hire some prostitutes and then I'll have sex with them and I'll review their services on Craigslist. That sounds pretty smart and fun, right? This guy had the mind of a minor, in my opinion. But he was a sick individual. In October 2011, James Holmes began dating a fellow student in his biology class. Their relationship lasted about 2 months, ending when she felt distant from him following an encounter between Holmes and another man who talked to her during a date on St. Patrick's Day. She said that James Holmes often made flat jokes that made other people feel uncomfortable, and he had expressed his desire to kill people. She tried to recommend getting professional help despite not taking his claims seriously. They resumed their relationship in early January 2012, but it ended again in February. This is where it gets interesting. James told a state appointed psychiatrist physician that their breakup contributed to his violent depression. And oftentimes, when there is a romantic breakup, it can lead to people doing the unthinkable, and it can lead to people committing the ultimate sacrifice, and that is oftentimes murder. And not only of one person, it could be the murder of many people. And in this case, this is what happened. This was a psychotic person that got angry over God knows what, possibly losing a relationship, and he got angry and he took it out on the wrong people. And he went in there disguised as the Joker, and he wanted to be the villain in the case. And ultimately, for him, he was a villain as he shot and killed a lot of people and ruined the lives of so many other people. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. So, now we're going to talk about the actual crime. We know about James Holmes now. We know about the background of this perpetrator. Let's talk about the crime that he actually committed. All right. So I had to get something to drink really quick. So, the crime committed, which was a movie theater mass shooting, and the first and only one in the United States history. So you can imagine how that shook the United States to the core. The 2012 Aurora movie theater shooting. On July 20th, 2012, a mass shooting occurred inside a Century 16 movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, United States, during a midnight screening of the film by Batman, The Dark Knight Rises. Dressed in tactical clothing, James Holmes set off tear gas grenades and shot into the audience with multiple firearms. This serial killer and this mass shooter was very intelligent. He was very smart. He figured by throwing tear gas grenades, it's going to distract everybody inside the movie theater. Therefore, it will be easy pickings for all these people. By getting them to have irritated skin and irritated eyes, these people are going to start rubbing their eyes, not realizing what's going on. And like a predator, James shot them one by one until he was satisfied. So 12 people were killed and ultimately 70 others were injured. 58 of them from gunfire. So 12 people being shot and killed and 70 injured and 58 by gunfire. That is a lot of life that forever changed on July 20th, 2012. People went to the movie theater to enjoy themselves with their friends and family and watch the new Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises. Instead, it turned out to be a night of nightmares, terror, and real life death. It was the deadliest shooting in Colorado since the Columbine High School Massacre in 1999. At the time, the event had the largest number of victims, 82, in one shooting in modern United States history. But 4 years later, this number was eventually surpassed by the 107 victims in the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting. And that case will be coming up in a couple of weeks here on the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. The shooting occurred in Theater 9 at the Century 16 multiplex operated by Cinemark Theaters located in the town center at Aurora Shopping Mall. Police said that James Holmes bought a ticket, entered the theater, and sat in the front row. About 20 minutes into the film, he left Theater 9 through an emergency exit door beside the movie screen with direct access to the lightly used parking area at the back of the complex while propping the door slightly open with a plastic tablecloth holder. There were about 400 people inside Theater 9. That is a shitload of people watching a movie. In 2022, we're just about ending a pandemic. So thinking about 400 people in a movie theater is a lot, but pretty soon we'll get back to those numbers. James Holmes went to his car, which he had parked near the exit door, changed into protective clothing, and retrieved his guns. About 30 minutes into the movie, police say around 12:30 a.m., he re-entered the theater through the exit door. He was dressed in black and wore a gas mask, a load-bearing vest, a ballistic helmet, bullet-resistant leggings, a bullet-resistant throat protector, a groin protector, and tactical gloves. He was listening to techno music through a set of headphones so that he could not hear anything from people in the theater. Initially, few in the audience considered Holmes to be a threat. Some witnesses thought he was wearing a costume, like other audience members who had dressed up for the screening. Some believed he was playing a prank, while others thought he was part of a special effects setup for the film's premiere or a publicity stunt by the studio or theater management. But I can guarantee you a movie theater will never do that because they know that it will cost them money if people think there's going to be a stunt like that. James Holmes repeatedly threw one canister towards the left side of the theater, emitting a gas or smoke that partially obscured the audience members' vision, made their throats and skin itch, and caused eye irritation. He fired a 12 gauge Remington 870 Express tactical shotgun, first at the ceiling and then at the audience. He also fired a Smith and Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle with a 100 round drum magazine, which eventually malfunctioned. Finally, he fired a 40 caliber Glock 22 Glen 4 handgun. He shot first to the back of the room and then toward people in the aisles. A bullet passed through the wall and hit three people in the adjacent Theater 8, which was screening the same film. Witnesses said the multiplex fire alarm system began sounding soon after the attack began, and staff told people in Theater 8 to evacuate. Holmes fired 76 shots in the theater, 6 from his shotgun, 65 from the semi-automatic rifle, and 5 from the .40 caliber handgun. The first phone calls to emergency services via 911 were made at 12:39 in the morning. Police arrived within 90 seconds and found 3 .40 caliber handgun magazines, a shotgun, and a large drum magazine on the floor of the theater. Some people reported the shooting via Twitter or text messaging rather than calling the police. That shows you how advanced social media has grown. Instead of calling the police, people are going to Twitter and talking about it. But during this time, officers were already at the movie theater, and they already knew about the crime. Ambulances were hindered by the chaos and congestion in the parking lot, and they were unable to reach the back of the complex where police had pulled the injured out through the emergency exit doors of Theater 9. Sergeant Stephen Redfern, one of the first police officers to arrive on the scene, sent victims to area hospitals in squad cars. At about 12:45 in the morning, police officer Jason Oviette apprehended Holmes behind the cinema next to his car without resistance. Because of his tactical clothing, Holmes was at first mistaken for another police officer. He was described as being calm and disconnected during his arrest. 2 federal officials said that James had dyed his hair red and called himself the Joker, although authorities later declined to confirm this. 3 days later, at his first court appearance in Seminole, Colorado, James Holmes' hair appeared reddish orange. Later, the Colorado district attorney who prosecuted Holmes said he never called himself the Joker and blamed the federal officials for the rumor. The officers found several firearms in the theater and inside the shooter's car, including another Glock 22 handgun. James was found carrying a first aid kit and spike strips, which he later admitted in an interview he had planned to use if police either shot at him or chased him. When apprehended, James Holmes told the police that he had booby-trapped his apartment with explosive devices. Police evacuated 5 buildings surrounding his Aurora residence, which was about 5 miles north of the cinema. His apartment complex is limited to University of Colorado Medical Center students, patients, and employees. One day after the shooting, officials disarmed an explosive device that was wired to the apartment's front door, allowing a remote-controlled robot to enter and disable other explosives. The apartment held more than 30 homemade grenades wired to a control box in the kitchen and was filled with at least 30 United States gallons of gasoline. Neighbors reported loud music from the apartment around midnight on the night of the massacre, and one went to his door to tell him she was calling the police. She said the door seemed to be unlocked, but she chose not to open it. A police officer said a Batman mask was found in the apartment. On July 23rd, police finished collecting evidence from the apartment. 2 days later, residents were allowed to return to the 4 surrounding buildings, and 6 days later, residents were allowed to move back into the formerly booby-trapped building. 82 casualties were reported, 82 victims. 70 were hit by bullets and were reported by mainstream news as the most victims of any mass shooting in United States history. This figure would not be surpassed until the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting, which killed 49 people and injured 58 others for a combined total of 107 casualties. Four people's eyes were irritated by the tear gas grenades, while eight others sustained non gunshot injuries while fleeing the theater. The massacre was the deadliest shooting in Colorado since the Columbine High School Massacre on April 20th, 1999. 10 victims died at the scene, and two more were pronounced dead in local hospitals. Here's the saddest thing of all. Four men, four American heroes, and four legends, and from legendary Alex Cardinale, four legendary men, Jonathan Blanc, John Lamar, Matt McQuinn, and Alexander C. Tebbs, died protecting their girlfriends, which is horrible. Imagine going out with your loved one and you're going to go see a movie you really wanted to see, but ultimately you die protecting your loved ones. That's an American hero right there. So I have a lot of love, respect, and admiration to those four gentlemen who chose to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect their loved ones. And that is a true American hero and a true legend, in my opinion. I call myself legendary Alex Cardinale, but in reality, those four gentlemen are more of a legend than I will ever be because their heroic acts saved the lives of their loved ones. And speaking of that, there's another gentleman by the name of Gordon Cowden who sadly lost his life saving the lives of his two teenage daughters. So he did the right thing by protecting his daughters from certain tragedy as well. So this tragedy is touching because the victims, in their last moments, saved the people that they love. And that is what I like about tragedy. When tragedy strikes the United States of America, our citizens get together in heroic moments and they fight against the tragedy. We may lose our lives sometimes, but we go down in a blaze of glory as heroes. So the victims ranged in age from the oldest being 51 years old to, get this, the youngest being only 6 years old. Very, very sad. A majority of the victims were 18 to 30 years old. So, in my eyes, all of the victims were really young, even the 51-year-old. Very, very sad. So, a lot of people's life changed on July 20th, 2012. On July 20th, 2012, sure, a dozen people lost their life. Sure, 58 people were injured, but many of those people who are still with us from this day, they're probably going to be too traumatized to ever want to go into a movie theater ever again after this horrific act. Very, very bad. Many of the victims that survived are suffering permanent reminders and permanent scars from this horrific movie theater mass shooting. There is a woman that is now paralyzed, and she is a paraplegic, and that is horrible. She was actually pregnant during this mass shooting. Her gunshot wounds ended up changing her life forever. She suffered a miscarriage and ultimately became a paraplegic, and she can no longer become pregnant now that she is paraplegic, and that is awful. That disgusts me that this happened. And then, like I said earlier, you got those five gentlemen who are legendary Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect their family. They lost their lives doing what I would do in that situation, and that would be to protect my loved ones. So very, very sad that they lost their life, but in the end, they are heroes. So Mr. James Holmes confessed to the shooting, but he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The Arapahoe County prosecutors sought the death penalty in this case. The trial began on April 27th, 2015. On July 16th of that year, Holmes was convicted of 24 counts of first degree murder, 140 counts of attempted first degree murder, and one count of possessing explosives. On August 7th, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On August 26th, he was given 12 life sentences, one for every person he killed. He also received 3,318 years for the attempted murders of those he wounded and for rigging his apartment with explosive. May James Holmes rot in hell, and may he rot in prison for what he did to all these victims that were just there to watch the newest Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises. I can't help anytime The Dark Knight Rises comes on TV, I can't help but think of the 12 people that lost their lives at that movie theater and everyone whose life has changed. So people that weren't even in the movie theater will have their life changed. The victims of those 12 people who died, their life forever changed because they will not have their victim or their family member with them anymore. So it's a really, really sad crime. It should have not happened. But this is America where we have freedoms, and sometimes the freedoms can come back to bite us in the ass. And in the case of mass shootings, this is an example of why only certain people should be allowed to have guns. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. So, my thoughts on this crime. It is horrible. It is a horrific act by a senseless, psychotic individual. A psychotic coward is what this person is. But like I said earlier, he was a very smart individual. He knew that if he went in there and he used tear gas, it's going to irritate the person's skin and they're not going to be able to react as quickly as if they did not have the tear gas. So he used the tear gas to his advantage, and he ended up shooting and killing a lot of the people when they were disrupted by the tear gas. And he injured so many more with the use of tear gas, which is really sad. So overall, my thoughts on this crime, it is horrible, and because of this crime, anytime that I go to a movie theater, I have my eyes on the exit. I have my eyes on the exit. I have my eyes on the entrance of that movie theater so that if anything happens, I can tell where to go and how to get out of there safely. And if I ever go alone, I sit right by the exit so that I can just leave quickly. So, my thoughts on this case, I hope it never happens again. I hope we never have to worry about a movie theater mass shooting ever again. Very, very sad case to talk about. And like I said in the intro, I remember watching the news at 12 midnight and hearing about this story. It is very, very sad. My last topic tonight, what would I do in a mass shooting? Well, really, there's no way to know when a mass shooting is going to occur. I wish there was a way to know, but in today's generation, and in reality, there's no way to know what a person is thinking or what a person may accomplish. So the only way you can prepare yourselves is to think negatively, unfortunately. So anytime you go to an event where there's going to be a big crowd, you have to get yourself ready and you have to get yourself thinking, What am I going to do if there's a psychotic person here who is planning to commit mass murder and do a mass shooting? One of the things that I was told was to arm yourself with a weapon to defend yourself. And legally, that means you would have to legally attain a gun. And you would have to go through all the legal steps of obtaining a gun. But trust me, if you do that, it could be the definition between life and death. If you're not comfortable with a gun, then you're probably going to want to do self-defense classes or get a knife. So, me personally, I would do any of those three things that I just mentioned. I would get the rights to have a gun. I would go to gun shooting ranges and practice. I would also go through self defense classes, and I would obtain a legal knife as well. So, if the shooter ever comes close to you, you could take out your gun and fire back at him, or you could use any of these self defense mechanisms that you have learned in self-defense class, or you could easily stab him. However, there are going to be times where you go to events without a weapon to defend yourself, and you're going to have to learn how to defend yourself without a weapon. And one of the biggest ways to do that is to partner up with people in your area. Find weapons that you could use to disturb the perpetrator. These can be chairs, these can be food, or anything that could cause a little bit of harm, something that would hurt the perpetrator enough to either drop his guns or stop what he's doing. Pepper spray is a great thing to have, and a lot of women these days carry pepper spray in their purses. So partnering up with a woman would be a good idea as well. But the biggest thing mentally that you could do in any event that is crowded with people is focus on the entrance and exits of the movie theater, for example. So in case there is a shooting going on there, you'll know where to run to. Now, sometimes you may get shot, sometimes you may be lucky and not. Nobody can outrun a bullet, no matter how skinny you are, how fast you are, um, no matter how lucky you are, you may not be able to outrun a bullet. But if you act quickly and you hear the sound of a gun and you don't stay in there, your chances of survival go up quickly. So make note of the entrance and exits of the building and don't linger in there. A lot of people die in a mass shooting situation because they keep themselves in the danger. They stay in the same room as the mass shooter. And I know that it sounds selfish, but in a tragedy like this, it is every man for themselves, every human for themselves, unless you are with a loved one or a family. You have to think of survival of the fittest. So it's every man for themselves. That is my motto when I'm going to be in a mass shooting. I'm going to think about getting out there safely for myself. And then when I am in safety, I will think about people that I love that maybe aren't my family members, but my personal friends. I will think about them as well. I know that it sounds selfish and cruel, but that comes from a actual police officer. That is what I was told what to do. Every man for themselves. The police will get involved and help everyone else that is in that building. But if you can and you have an opening, then you need to take it and you need to get out of there. If you can, then you can have a friend go with you or whoever you love go with you. But you know what they say, when there's people in numbers escaping, it draws attention from the perpetrator. So if you're leaving with a whole bunch of people, he's going to see you guys going for the exit, and you know what? He's going to turn to you and start firing. So that's why I say when you have the opening and he's focused on a certain area, make sure that there's nothing at the entrance or the exit that's going to make him look over. If there's a lot of people gathered by the exit and the entrance, You're going to have to be smart and come up with another plan. That could include sitting under chairs or tables, or ultimately the sacrifice of defending yourself. I know some of the stuff I'm saying may not make sense, but it's what I would do. Sometimes you have no choice but to be in the same building and have to pray that you survive. It all depends on the situation. But we'll have this topic again with a more certified person. So, what would you guys do in a mass shooting? Let me know in the comments of today's video. Also, in the comments of today's video, share your thoughts on this crime. All right, crime lovers, thank you for being here tonight, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy the video, smash and punch that like button for me, and definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel, the legendary Alex Cardinale, for more awesome videos. Next week, next Monday, March 14th, 2022, my crime will be on the stabbing death of a deli owner by the name of Jerome Pastor. And this took place in New Jersey. So next Monday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, I'll talk about the stabbing death of deli owner Jerome Pastor. A very sad case. Jerome was stabbed to death by an 18-year-old thug. This 18-year-old thug stabbed Jerome Pastor after stealing the tip jar, and he was upset that he had not been hired yet. I'll give you all the juicy details of this crime next Monday, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. So, with that being said, I hope all of you guys stay safe, and I hope you have a great rest of your Monday evening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the legendary Alex Cardinale. Do not, and I mean do not, commit a crime. Crime is committed by so many people, and I definitely never want any of my subscribers to commit crime. Have a great one, and thank you for watching, everybody.